Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the July 20th, 2020 episode of the Cyber and Security Stream. My name is Neil Bridges, and thank you, as always, for joining me today. If this is your first time joining us for the stream, our mission here is to elevate the conversation around cybersecurity and make it more digestible for a much broader audience. And so, through that mission, every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, we stream from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, toying with the idea of making the Saturday streams in the morning for those who are on Central European time. If that appeals to you, definitely looking for your feedback on that. Cybersecurity as a whole is in such a state of flux all the time that there's always something for us to talk about. The community is always actively out there doing stuff. We're constantly getting asked questions, and there's tons of people out there seeking knowledge. And so our goal here is to focus on multiple aspects of the industry, whether you're an experienced veteran or new to the field, whether you barely know how to spell cyber or somebody who was born in cyber, right? This stream is really for you. We simulcast stream across 3 different platforms, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. This is to ensure that we hit all the demographics, all ages, and all skill levels as possible. So good evening to all of our viewers on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Glad to have you here. With that being said as well, all of the chat channels are linked together. And so if you ask a question in one, it should resonate across all the different chat channels. So we do highly encourage active chat participation amongst all the viewers. It is meant to be interactive, and as such, we do read and respond to chats on a pretty regular basis. We have moderators standing by, and if there's things that you ask that I can answer on stream, then I'll absolutely answer on stream. We're hoping to get approval to stream on LinkedIn before long. We'll let you know as soon as that happens, but as soon as it does, we'll also simulcast to LinkedIn as well. In the meantime, if you find these streams helpful, please don't hesitate to hit that follow button if you're on Twitch, hit that subscribe button if you're over there on YouTube, and hit that like button on Facebook. And if you're looking for us on Twitter, you can find us at IT Junkie on Twitter, and follow us there for articles, updates, things that are happening in the news, as well as stream schedules and things like that. Okay. So with those logistics out of the way, let's talk about our schedule for the day. As I mentioned in the introduction, right, we do have a very active chat. We try to have a very active chat. On yesterday's stream, we streamed yesterday, kind of off schedule a little bit, but during yesterday's stream, we did a Q&A via some questions that were happening in some of the subreddits on Reddit. As a result of that, we actually got a lot of people who were asking questions about capture the flags and things that they could do, especially during this lockdown time period. And so as a result of that, we had promised that on the very next stream, we would do a deep dive on capture the flags. And so we're going to kind of take a large portion of the stream here at the beginning part to kind of do a deep dive on capture the flags. We're gonna talk about what types of capture the flags they are, what are some of the resources that you can have inside of your toolbox to be ready for a capture the flag, how do you find capture the flags to participate in, and then I'll kind of give you some of my personal recommendations and experiences on some of the capture flags that are out there. Then we will hit some of the cybersecurity news that's out there for today. We're going to follow up on kind of our conversation yesterday on the Twitter hack. I typically wouldn't do the same news 2 days in a row, but they actually released some updated information today. There's some new stuff that's kind of come to light over the YouTube hack. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and kind of catch up on that. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the F5 vulnerability that was released a couple weeks ago. There's been some follow-up research for that as well. Then we're going to move over to our Monday edition of the Reddit Q&A. It was actually so popular yesterday when we did it that we went ahead and curated some of the most asked questions over on Reddit from a cybersecurity perspective, and we're going to go ahead and hit that again and answer some of the questions on Reddit. And a lot of the folks on Reddit who we responded to were very, very grateful that we were able to answer those questions, and so we're going to go ahead and do that again. And so if you if you're here from Reddit looking at your question, that'll be one of the last things that we do on the stream. But we'll definitely get to some of those folks that I kind of messaged earlier today and told them that we'd be profiling their question on Reddit today. All right. So one of the first things that we are going to cover is capture the flag events. And so when we talk about capture the flag events, actually I meant to do that one. When we talk about capture the flag events, there's lots of different types of capture the flag events. It depends on who sets them up, who establishes them, who runs them, what types of rules are involved. But generally speaking, there are two main style of capture the flag events that are out there. The first is a Jeopardy style capture the flag event, and the second is a wargaming style capture the flag event. So a Jeopardy style capture the flag event is exactly like it sounds. If anybody's ever watched Jeopardy with good old Alex Trebek, one of the things that he does very, very well is he sets up questions, and he gives folks the answer, and then the three contestants that are standing out there up front, they have to basically answer in the form of a question what is on there. That's not exactly what we're talking about when we talk about Jeopardy style events. What we're really talking about with Jeopardy style events is some type of question and answer whereby you'll have oftentimes a set of cybersecurity questions with points assigned to them. If you've ever participated in SANS Net Wars, or if you've ever participated in some of the Google Ctfs, those are very much the Jeopardy style, whereby you get questions. Those questions oftentimes involve you doing some type of activity. Maybe you have to reverse engineer a binary. Maybe you have to, go onto a website and, decode some type of hash that's out there on that website, and, put that hash into, some type of score checker. And then that score checker tells you whether you got points for it or not. Fundamentally, those Jeopardy style questions are very, very cognitive, and they ask you to go out and seek some type of answer, and then once you get that answer, then they give you points based on that answer, and then there's oftentimes a leaderboard that's associated with it. Pros and cons of that, right? So pros of that are those are very, very easy CTFs to set up. You just have to get the questions. You just have to make sure that the lab environments are set up appropriately so that you can, be successful in allowing your CTF contestants to be able to access those questions, be able to answer them, make sure that all of the kind of targets, if you will, have all the answers that they need to for folks to be successful in. Some of the cons of those types of CTF events, right, is they don't always represent reality. If you're looking for CTFs that walk you through a process, or walk you through a set of boxes where you have to start at X and then you have to move from from this box to this box to this box to this box, if you're talking about an offensive style CTF, or even if you're talking about a defensive style CTF, if you're talking about like a boss of the SOC exercise with Splunk, or something whereby you're you're trying to solve for problems, then those Jeopardy style CTFs don't actually provide you with a whole lot of what I would call real world experience when it comes to the skills that they teach you. They're very good at helping you understand concepts and point in time concepts, and kind of get you used to doing things in that perspective. Unlike wargaming, so wargaming is kind of the opposite of that, right? So when we talk about wargaming style capture the flag events, we're very much talking about capture the flag events that put you in a scenario and put you as either an offensive player or a defensive player. And by sitting in those roles of being an offensive player or a defensive player, you have objectives that you have to achieve, and typically those objectives, depending on where you sit on, revolve around some concept of a flag. That flag has a tendency to potentially existing, inside of a box, inside of a binary. If you're doing any type of blue team capture the flag, that flag could exist inside of a packet capture and having to do it. But oftentimes what you're presented with is you're sitting down at a scenario, or at a range, if you will, whereby you have an unknown number of computers, or maybe you do have a known number of computers. And you're basically told, okay, here is your scenario. You now have to go forth and execute the scenario as it's written in the script. And that's very much what's used to drive, if you will, your progression through that capture the flag. In red team capture the flag type events, it is not uncommon for you to only be given access to one box, and then based on how successful you are in that box, you may then go from that box to another box. That secondary box, or may then branch your way into 2 additional boxes, and then from there you may get to the entire environment or to a domain controller or something like that. So as you can see from a wargaming perspective, those types of capture the flag events are much more geared towards how would you actually do something in a real world setting, right? So from a blue team perspective, like if you look at some of the blue team ones, they set you there as if you are part of a security operations center, you're doing some type of incident analyst type of work. And what happens is that, you get an alert that fires, and then you have to go through that incident response process and do all of those things that are for that incident response process to kind of take it through from beginning to end. And so I would definitely say that when you're looking at your capture the flag choices, right, and you're looking at, Jeopardy style versus wargaming style, there really isn't a better or worse one. The pros from, a wargaming style is, yes, it at least takes you on an adventure when it comes to being successful in the capture the flag. It gets you a lot more immersive and kind of helps you hone skills and figure out how to chain skills back and back together instead of focusing on, one particular skill at a time. But one of the downsides to those, if you're an event planner, right, is that it's actually kind of difficult to set those up, and especially set up the scenarios so that they're successful and that they work for the students. If you're participating in one, oftentimes there are artificial boundaries for you to progress through the CTF, whereby you may actually get caught on a particular scenario that you can't progress past. And if you can't progress past it, then you can't continue to participate in the exercise. And so from a learning perspective, that has a tendency to not necessarily achieve really the learning objectives that you're trying to learn by going to a CTF. Depending, and again, this really just kind of depends on how the CTF is built and whether the CTF is built for you to be able to self-navigate yourself around around that scenario as best way possible. Now, in terms of resources to get ready for a capture the flag and for participating in capture the flag, depending on what type of capture the flag you're participating in, depending on where you're participating on that capture the flag, you need to have some type of machine to participate in that CTF, whether that's a laptop with Kali on it, or with Black Arch, or some other type of offensive distro or defensive distro. If you're doing any type of blue team, you're probably looking at like OpenSock or Sans Sift workstation to do those types of CTFs, or even some type of rolling your own type of environment where maybe you have a mix of Windows and Linux VMs that have your custom tools on there. You're going to want to have a singular device, if you will, that can act as kind of the center of your world when it comes to doing your capture the flag. Preferably, you want it to be a dedicated machine, or at least a machine that, if you're doing other types of research, it's a machine that you can do research on and do the CTFs on at the same point in time, especially if you're doing a lot of custom development or custom code development and things like that. On top of that, we want to make sure that machine is not necessarily one that's attached to something that you do for work. And the reason for that, right, is that, especially if you're doing any type of blue team forensics based capture the flag, there are some capture the flags out there that use real malware. And so you'd basically be reverse engineering or analyzing, real world malware on a potential work computer. And so you want to be absolutely cognizant of that. So that you don't run into any particular types of problems whereby you accidentally infect yourself with a piece of malware, or infect your work computer with a piece of malware. That'd be a really terrible thing to have happen, as you participate in the CTF. Now, Now with your machine in place, when you've got your kind of computer set up and you're ready to rock and roll, that's where we can kind of get into some of the other aspects of prepping for a capture the flag event. Now, I'm going to show you a series of links, and I will make these links available for everybody. We'll post them in comments on the YouTube channel when we post all the videos and whatnot, so that everybody's got them at their disposal. But we want to kind of walk you through, a couple main sections, right? Is resources that can help you get ready for a CTF. So this is kind of your preparation phase of your capture the flag. We're going to show you some resources to help you find capture the flags for you to participate in. And then I'll give you some of my personal recommendations when it comes to capture the flags as well. So with that, we'll start with some resources to kind of help you kind of prepare in advance for a CTF. And so the first one that we're really going to kind of demonstrate for you here is on GitHub. This particular individual here, Aspendahel, I'm sure I butchered that and I apologize for it in advance, but he has created a GitHub page here called the Awesome CTF. This Awesome CTF is, as he lists here, right, a curated list of things that you can use to help you basically prepare for a CTF. And what he's done very much so is he has broken it down into chapters where he's got create, solve, and then some resources here on the other side of it, right? So under the create, he's talked about different ways for you to focus on things like forensics, platforms. This is if you're going to actually, create your own capture the flag type of event. This is a section for that. Steganography and web, and then under solve, he's got lots of the typical types of challenges, and that's what you'll find is awesome about a resource like this is, typically these are the types of things that people can create as part of a CTF, and that leads into kind of a potentially interesting conversation that we can have, right? Is how do you game a CTF? We could definitely go into a little bit of a rabbit hole on how you game a CTF and how you look to game a CTF, because as we're very analytical folks and we're very thought-provoking type of folks, it's not beyond us to look at that and say, well, how do I get around like how these game developers have actually built this game? You can see down here, this is these first two, right, is how to create CTFs, right? So, blueprints for how to do those challenges. These are tools for creating forensics challenges, right? And so you're able to create like DNS type of traffic that you can then use for some type of forensics exercise, registry information, and then as I mentioned before, right, platforms. Whereby you can create or you can host a CTF on here as well. And they've got things like scoring systems, an entire engine that's written in PHP, things like this. And you even got like Open CTF, which is CTF in a box, right? And so things like this help you if you're asked to build for your organization any type of capture the flag. This is definitely kind of like your number one stop for what works for you in terms of trying to make your CTF work for your organization. Now, I would caution, anybody out there that is looking to build their own CTF. It may seem like it's a really fun project to do and really something awesome that you wanted to do, but at the end of the day, right, it's a very, very, very challenging thing to do. Not only is it challenging, but it's also it's not as easy as people make it out to be, because honestly, one of the things that you're challenged with as part of a game developer, right, is creating a scenario that challenges the users, but also, gives them realistic ways that they can answer questions. A lot of folks, get into a mindset when they build a CTF that they're going to make it as hard as possible. And so they look for that niche answer, that niche scenario whereby they're the only ones that could solve it, or unless you're, as smart as me, then you would never think of being able to solve things this way. And that's quite honestly a problem when you look at that from a game development perspective, because that shouldn't be the purpose of CTFs. The purpose of CTFs should be to have fun, encourage learning across a broad skill set, and things like that. And so, definitely an entire kind of, deep dive that we could potentially do on the right and the wrong ways to build your own CTF. But either way, excellent resource if you're looking at it in terms of where to go to help have a platform that you can build CTFs on. Now let's talk about solving CTFs, right? So he's got it broken down by create and solved, as I mentioned before. So in terms of tools that are used for solving CTFs, so if you're looking for things that you can put into that VM or put onto that distro that you just got set up to actually do that capture the flag, these are tools that you should make sure that you have installed, right? So like things like BetterCap, Ucernia. They got them broken down by crypto. They've got them broken down by brute forcers, different types of exploits. This is always very rough. You never know what type of exploit environment you're going to run into and which exploits you're going to be able to run or going to have at your disposal or even are going to be available on the CTF environment. Metasploit being on here is definitely a very safe choice, a very pragmatic choice for using something from a CTF perspective. But all of these are all great tools to just kind of have at your disposal and whatnot. Similarly for forensics, I've seen probably just as many forensics capture the flag events out there as I've seen offensive capture the flag events out there. And so lots of things like CFF dump for portable executable editors, things like Xif tool. There's almost always some steganography challenges on almost every CTF I've been a part of, and so Stego tools, and then XF tools for things like metadata on pictures and files and Word documents and PDFs and things like that is definitely very huge as well. Network Miner is huge from a network analysis perspective. Wireshark, you can't go wrong with Wireshark. Volatility is an amazing open source project if you're not familiar with that. Most of these, I do believe, are included inside of the SANS SIFT workstation. So if you have SANS SIFT, most of these you should actually have available for you inside the SANS SIFT workstation. But if not, these are good ones to have. And then similarly here on the networking side, you can see Wireshark mentioned again because, well, Wireshark is awesome. Nmap for doing any type of network mapping. And then we've got a section down here on reverse engineering, right? This is there's another section that we could probably do a ton of in depth on when it comes to doing reverse engineering, but all of the things listed here are definitely fantastic tools. You can see that there's quite a few here for reverse engineering, right? So these APK tools, right? These are for Android decompiling and whatnot. You've got GDB here, sorry, for just general debuggers. IDA Pro here. This one obviously doesn't have Geardra. Oh yeah, those have Geardra. So this is the NSA open source tool that's listed here. So right all the way down, WinDBG doesn't have OllyDBG on here. It doesn't have OllyDebug on here. Surprised on that one. But as you can see here, lots of tools here that you've got here, and then we go down here to steganography. This is again Xif tool, things like that, and as well as tons of tools to try to pick apart stego type environments. So if you're not familiar with steganography, this is basically the ability to hide something inside of an image of something else. Could tell you lots of stories from the military, and I think that there was even a report that was done out there whereby they had identified that back in the mid 2000s or so, Al Qaeda was using things like eBay and things like Craigslist and other types of services like that, even Facebook, before Facebook started to change how they did file uploads, whereby folks from Al Qaeda would put secret messages inside of pictures. I'll use the Craigslist example because I've actually seen the Craigslist example, right, where somebody will take a picture of a couch, put a secret message into the picture of a couch via a steganography tool, and then post that couch up for sale on Craigslist or eBay or somewhere like that. And then, what would then happen eventually would be, the intended recipient would download that image from Craigslist or from eBay, run one of these stego tools off of it, and get that secret image out of there. And so this is obviously back in the mid 2000s before, Facebook's Craigslist and eBay and things like that started to clear off the metadata and change actually some of the image qualities before they would allow images to be uploaded to their platform. But yeah, that was a very, very real use case whereby, some very nasty people were using steganography in the real world to kind of hide secret messages. But it never goes without saying that there's almost always a steganography challenge on most capture the flags out there. And so lots of good tools here from that. More resources. We mentioned, operating systems that you can use before, right? So this has got a lot of the operating systems that you could potentially use, as well as some straight up VMs that allow you to use it. So fantastic guide here here on this one. It's appropriately named the Awesome CTF, and so we'll definitely make sure that we include a link to that when we post up the video up on YouTube, so you've got it. Actually, we'll go ahead and put it in chat right now so that everybody's got it available in chat. In case anybody's looking for it now. Moving on to, one of the GitHub, the other GitHub Ctf resources that are out there, right? This one was one that I thought was interesting because there's a difference between knowing that you want to get into CTFs and being very, very familiar with CTFs, just in the sense of what they are, how they are. But one of the things that I like about this resource, that's here right now, and I'll kind of post this one up in chat as well, so everybody's got access to this one so they can look at it as well. Right. One of the reasons that I love this one is not only does it talk about what a CTF is or how to use these docs and things like this, but let's talk about steganography since we just got done off of that topic, right? If you look at steganography, it will actually give you a definition of what steganography is. It will give you examples of this steganography, and it will actually talk to you about detecting, how to detect steganography and how to solve for them in most cases, and then even CTF examples. And so what this does, right, if you're new to CTFs or if you're trying to figure out, how to solve particular problems inside of CTFs, you can use a resource like this to whereby, I wouldn't call it a cheat sheet so much. What I would refer to this more as is, they're giving you hints that say, if you think you're dealing with this type of event, or if you think you're dealing with this type of question in a CTF file, then, use this as a way to say, well, typically, if we want to solve for this, we should probably use something like binwalk, right, to automatically detect and extract hidden files with steganography tools. You can go over here, and they've even got the same thing for, come on, it's going to load. Oh, no, so sorry, there we go. So again, demo fail there a little bit as well. So they've got it here for steganography, but it looks like it's still underway for PHP and SQL injections. But again, you kind of see the point there with that one. So with those, I think those are two fantastic resources when it comes to just bookmarks that I would have. Kind of at your disposal in terms of the preparation phase for a capture the flag. Now let's kind of roll into how do you find capture the flags to participate in. This is literally looking for a needle in a stack of needles type of scenario. There are so many resources that are out there. There are so many places that you can go and look for a CTF. One of the first places that I think everybody should look for first before going anywhere else, right, is the Security Ctf on Reddit. Now, I'm not a moderator on this page. I don't have any vested interest in you subbing to this page or joining this page or anything else. But I can't begin to underscore the value of Reddit from an information dump perspective. There's so much information that's out there on Reddit, and a lot of it is really good information. And so, I joke with folks that Reddit is the new forums, right? Whenever I still see old school, forums that are up there, I'm like, hey, the 90s called. They want their method of collaboration back. I think Reddit has really made a really good niche for itself in terms of creating a good platform for collaboration. And so there is a Security Ctf subreddit. You can see it's pretty popular. They are updated regularly. They do have, a pretty regular amount of folks who post up on here in terms of looking for CTFs, in terms of looking for, different types of help and whatnot. You can also see that they have walkthroughs, right? And so what I would encourage folks to do when they're looking at these walkthroughs, don't look at these walkthroughs before you jump into the CTF looking for answers. For a lot of the big walkthroughs out there, particularly things like Hack in the Box or Try Hack Me and things like that, is you will find walkthroughs that are out there pretty easily. I want you to go to those walkthroughs and I want you to review those walkthroughs. But the reason I want you to do that, right, is, because I want you to have answers to the problems that you're trying to solve so that you can actually learn from them. And that's a huge thing, right? Because I don't think that we spend enough time helping folks learn from their mistakes. I'm not a fan of the try harder mentality. And I think you've probably heard me say this before on other methods or on other streams is, I think that that's a terrible way for folks to learn and get educated in our space. And so I definitely want you to know where these walkthroughs are, and I definitely want you to read these walkthroughs. But at the same time, take them for what they are, right? And they should be learning aids to help you learn how to do things and help you get better in your, in your CTF preparation and how you go about doing that. Again, you start to see other walkthroughs and things like that. But you can also see, here's one from 3 days ago, right, where it's a CTF hosted here with prizes and challenges, right? And so, from here you can find, CTFs with this as well, in terms of this subreddit. So, highly recommend, if you haven't already, I'd recommend you join in the Security CTF subreddit and using that. Speaking of Reddits, if you're inside of this community and you're looking for Reddits to join, and we could definitely, probably potentially put up a list of some of the good cybersecurity subreddits that are there. It's actually one of those places where you can actually find some good capture the flags as well. And so, one of the things that we can demonstrate here. If I can find it. I hit a window. There it goes. Whew. I hit a window and I couldn't find it. Small demo fail there with that one. Apologize for that, everybody. So here we're looking at my Discord as well, right? And so one of the places where I'm a member of, right, is NetSec Students, and NetSec Students has a very specific section inside their topics called CTF General. And so if you actually scroll through here, and look at CTF General and whatnot, you can actually see that they've got tons of links inside of here of other CTFs and challenges that are out here. This is a fantastic resource here, right? So you hear another CTF here. This one was back in April. Here's another CTF. This is a challenge solver in Python, right? Here's a Trace Labs one. I'll get to that one here in a little bit. But tons of resources listed here in NetSec Students. And also, this is one of the things that I think is incredibly important about joining communities like this, right? Is you've got a guy here who is looking for a team or, looking to hang out to compete in CTFs. And folks are talking about, I wouldn't let this intimidate you. If you're looking at this and saying, well, gosh, I'm nowhere near that at all. Definitely don't let that intimidate you and stop you from talking to somebody like this and participating in CTFs with folks like this. But I definitely wouldn't undercut the value of going on Discord and looking at some of the CTFs that happen to be here on Discord as well. One of the other things that I meant to show this as well on the Discord side, over on the Red Team Village Discord, right, on the Capture the Flag one. You can also see here on this one, right? So this is, another one as well. So even on the Red Team Village Discord, they're also talking about looking for folks to, help participate in this CTF as well. And you can see that they also do, other Discords for, this particular CTF that's out there. So this is a Discord that's set up specifically for this CSI CTF that's out there. So lots of good resources here on Discord as well. So don't overlook trying to join as many of those Discords as possible to get that reach out there. Now there's lots of other sites that we could talk about in terms of where to find CTFs, and I think that some of the sites like VulnHub and TryHackMe and HackTheBox and things like that, I think that those sites are very worthwhile. I think they are also very overplayed, and so I'm going to show you some some other resources that can kind of help you see a broader, CTF landscape than what folks would have you in kind of those realms and whatnot. And so we're going to start real quick with a site called WeChal, basically We Challenge, right? And so this is a site, it's a challenge site that's focused on pretty much, a lot of computer related problem solving. So you can see here, they've got them listed here in bold, right? Cryptographic, ways to do encryption cracking, steganography, as I mentioned before, programming type of CTFs, and then logic and math science. I'm going to show you 2 or 3 of these sites that are kind of an aggregate site like this, but I find a lot of value in these aggregate sites because they bring you with a lot of diversity. The things like Try Hack Me and Hack the Box and VulnHub, those are very offensive focused, right? Those are very much teaching you, the pen testing stuff and the hacking methodology and things like that. But again, I want you to remember something, and the goal of this stream isn't to teach you, only hacking type of topics and techniques, but there's so much more to an information security organization, especially in the blue team space, in the intelligence gathering space and things like that. And so it requires you to be very well-rounded and very diversified in how you look at, the challenges that you pick from a capture the flag perspective. And so when we look at this WeChal site, right, you can peruse all this stuff up here, right? So you can register on a page, and by registering, you get a user ID and a name as well as that. But what that does is that gives you a ranking, right? And again, don't get so caught up on the ranking that you're scared away from doing a capture the flag. You should absolutely measure yourself. It should not be intimidating to measure yourself how you're doing on some of these capture the flags. If you do very well, as I've mentioned in streams in the past, right? You can use the fact that you're doing very well on your resume and in the interviews to kind of help bolster your kind of stance in terms of getting a job and what that means and things like that. But you can also see how you're doing against other folks inside of inside the community. And so you can see here that we just simply clicked on this guy, Benito 255, right? And you can see his score, and you can see he's got, he's ranked number 1 in Britain, and he's ranked number 3 globally, right? And you can see how long he's been on the platform. And you can see, the capture the flag events or the challenges particularly that he's participated in, and the scores and the progress that he's made on that. And so, it's very, very beneficial for you to track your capture the flag type of progress. If you wanted to actually look at things from a per site perspective, I just simply clicked on the sites up here at the top, and you can see that they've got all of the sites, or several of the sites, right, that have capture the flag events that are up here, that are currently being offered. Here's the description of it. You can also break them down by languages that they speak, the type of CTF events that they have out there. You can see that they've got programming sites that are listed, things like that, research and development, things like that. So tons of pickers that you can go. Like this one's listed as active sites. So as it stands right now, there's a page with the sites that you've got right here that are active with a set of challenges. One of the things that I do like about this, right, it tells you the number of users, tells you how many challenges they've got, but it also gives you a difficulty factor and a fun factor. Now, both of those are relative. I understand that. Again, don't let it discourage you. I wouldn't do something picked basically on the difficulty and basically on the fun factor. But at least it gives you something that, if it's not very difficult, right, then maybe it's a good place to start or something like that. But a good site here nonetheless. I'll go ahead and put this one in the chat so everybody's got it as well, instead of waiting for that one to go up on YouTube. Another good site in terms of this is there's a capturetheflag.com. This is an old site. It's captf.com, capturetheflag.com. So again, this one is you can see this one's very, very low key compared to the one that we saw earlier. So this one, again, there's probably some margin for error in terms of this site, in terms of maybe some of the dead links that potentially be on here. We can see that if we look at a lot of the content, you can see that he has updated it pretty recently as as of April of this year. So, chances are this is also probably pretty accurate as well. So he's got his broken down into live online games in terms of recommended and others, web app specific type stuff, forensics specific type stuff. This is one of the ones that's interesting here is for those of you who are out there looking for your careers or looking to try to get into certain companies, companies like Praetorian. If you're not familiar with Praetorian, they're a very, very good pen testing type of company. They don't just do pen testing; they do other type of stuff as well. But they actually have a challenge that if you want to go be part of their red team or part of their penetration testing team, doing their challenge, is kind of and I wouldn't call it a prerequisite, but it helps set your resume apart from others when you actually go to apply for that job. And so I don't know if this is a sign of things that we will see in the future moving towards, companies who are doing pen testing type work having to do this. I know that for myself specifically, when I've hired pen testers in the past, I have set up lab environments for pen testers to basically be able to do a hands-on on the job training when it comes to applying for a job. It has its pros and cons. One of the things that I'll tell you is that, if it gets back to creating your own CTF and making sure that you create a CTF that helps you to gauge the skill set of an individual, all the way from, whether they're, pretty new in their pen testing career versus whether they're kind of experienced. And so, make sure that you keep that in mind as you're creating these types of capture the flags if you're doing this for a recruiting purpose. But I think that this is an ingenious idea, and I highly endorse this for companies who are looking to hire pen testers or even blue teamers for that matter. I think that this is where we'll see more organizations go to in the future. Lots of things. Got downloadable games here, from companies like OWASP and Iron Geek and things like that. Different types of virtual machines. Damn Vulnerable Linux is probably the de facto standard when it comes to trying to do some of the local based do it yourself stand up a VM type of hacking challenges. That one, Metasploitable. The damn vulnerable web app, which is put out by OWASP and things like that. So lots of things to do here from like a download or virtual machine perspective. But again, really good site, lots of fantastic resources, places for you to get started and get into some CTFs there. One of probably the last one that I'll demonstrate, and the one that I think garners the most attention from a lot of folks, or at least a lot of attention from a lot of folks, is Ctf Time. Go here and we'll paste this link in chat so everybody's got it in chat. Right. So Ctf Time is yet another website whereby you can register yourself for an account. This allows you to track your progress. As you can see here, they've got teams. They've got, this, you can see here that this is a CTF that is actually currently running. It's underway right now with 19 hours more to go, and there's 104 teams competing. They've got past events and whatnot that you can see, and they've even got write-ups that are included here with the events that they pertain to. So kind of a good all-in-one place for you to get CTF information all in one place. You can see that they've got, kind of some of the CTFs, some of the mainstream CTFs that are listed here, just in terms of making you aware of what they are and whatnot. This isn't nearly as good as like looking at the upcoming tab, right, where you're able to see all the CTFs that are kind of up and coming, the dates that have them. You see, we talk about formats, Jeopardy. They have an attack and defense one here at the DEF CON CTF. So that one is obviously, as part of the DEF CON canceled, doing everything virtual, right, type of CTF. But you can see that all of these, scrolling on down, right, they even have categories where you can have, if you're academic teams only or if you're pre-qualified, then you could participate in them as well. And they even tell you all the teams that are registered here. So fantastic resource here if you're looking for kind of a nice little all-in-one, place to see CTFs. One of the things to mention is that this is a very community driven type of categorization of CTF events. They do require CTF organizers to participate and submit their events and be part of this system, to do it. And so it's only as good as the folks who kind of help contribute and kind of help give their information over to these guys so that they can track the CTF perspective. But all in all, this is my most recommend site when it comes to looking for CTFs. And again, just a fantastic resource that if you're looking to get into CTFs, you can get a lot of good visibility as to what's going on out there. There are others. These kind of these 4 or 5 ways that I've showed you here just now are absolutely not the only ways that you can go out and find CTFs. These are, for those who are looking for places to start, and those who are looking, if you go back to Neil's 4 ways of getting into cybersecurity, from a couple of weeks ago, right? Finding that thread to pull on. This is a perfect example of that thread to pull on is, go find some of these CTFs, get yourself involved, start to participate in them, and pull on that thread, and then you'll ultimately find yourself landing, somewhere, that's beneficial. Let's talk about some of my personal recommendations when it comes to CTFs, my experiences with them, why I think that they're good and beneficial, and why I think you should participate in them. So first and foremost, if it is a DEF CON event, I would highly recommend you participate in DEF CON CTFs. This year is a special year. I can't highlight this enough because DEF CON has been canceled. Because DEF CON has been canceled, because most of the conferences is 100% virtual. The CTFs are all going to be 100% virtual. This means that the barrier to entry for folks to participate in CTFs has been reduced significantly. I can't emphasize this enough. This is a fantastic opportunity for anybody to participate in a DEF CON CTF that hasn't been able to in the past. And so if you're a blue teamer, the DEF CON CTF that I would completely advise you to participate in, right, is the OpenSOC CTF that's going to be happening in the Blue Team Village. These guys always put on a fantastic event. Also, when you pair this with being able to participate inside of the Blue Team Village, Discord as well, you can find folks that you can hook up with, do the CTF with, and whatnot. Again, fantastic resource here in terms of if you're looking for blue team challenges, and if you're looking for ways to kind of push your blue team skills a little bit further, I would definitely recommend the OpenSOC CTF. The other fantastic CTF that I would recommend is Trace Labs. If you are not familiar with Trace Labs, Trace Labs is an amazing organization. I forgot to bring their tab open. I apologize for that. So Trace Labs is a fantastic organization whereby they do crowdsourced open source intelligence gathering for missing persons. If you're familiar with open source intelligence on the pen testing side, you're pretty used to using open source intelligence to, kind of ahead of your attack, whereby you go out and you recon an organization, you recon the people, that are working at that organization from a Facebook or a LinkedIn, Twitter type perspective. You're used to performing open source reconnaissance on the technology at that company to figure out and find weak points for those companies so that you can get into it. These guys at Trace Labs have taken it a step further, whereby they have a capture the flag that is focused on actually doing something philanthropic, kind of doing something magnanimous for the entire world, whereby they use their open source intelligence gathering skills to help folks find missing folks. And they've done a ton of work, here in terms of building a fantastic, mission and capability set, for this. I'll kind of show you, if you when you go to their, kind of their Discord, right, you've got tons of resources at your disposal here. from a Discord perspective. They've got all their announcements that are listed here. All the announcements for any of the events that they've got going on. They've got an entire events page that's listed here, so that you can see their events. You can see that they've got events listed here for SC Village as part of DEF CON, judges, ongoing operations, right? OSINT news, whereby you can catch up on any of your OSINT news that's out there. They even have an entire resources section, right, listed, where you can get OSINT tools that are curated together all the way through all of this. And so their Slack channel is very, very awesome. They've got tons of really good information to join their Slack channel. It's completely free. You can simply click on up here and join their Slack channel. And they run several events throughout the year. This isn't just one of those things where they only do an event during DEF CON. They literally just got done running an event less than 30 days ago. I think it was, as a matter of fact, I think it was like two days ago. Do they have their past events? No, there we go, past events right here, right? So here recently, just within, right, so not even a week ago, they just got done doing their global OSINT search party, right? Their capture the flag that they did a week ago. Sorry, down here, right, where you could have gotten involved to do their global OSINT search party outside of the DEF CON type of event. You can see, these are all past events that they've got, where you can see that they've got tons of missing persons events that they've run, for the last, several years, right, since they've been available. And so, fantastic organization, fantastic, opportunity for you to showcase your ability to dig information up and find information on people that are out there. You simply find you an event and you want to click on. So in this case, this is actually an event that I'm going to enjoy participating in, right? This is the OSINT search party, as part of as part of DEF CON. You can see that as part of the event, they've got an event schedule that's listed here. They give you getting on the platform and forming a team. And they break down how the CTF works and even the prizes that they've got for the CTF. So again, I can't emphasize this as enough. This is a fantastic, capture the flag event to participate in. Not only is it fun, it goes for a good cause, and you're actually having a real effect with folks on the other side when you participate in the CTF. And if you're really good at open source intelligence gathering, this is an amazing one to participate in. In terms of other worthy causes, other worthy cause CTFs to participate in, if you're in the education space and you're looking for ways to help, I know I've got a really good friend who works at Carbon Black. Hopefully one day I'll be able to get him on the stream and have him on the show, or one of these days. He does a lot of youth mentoring and works very closely with a lot of schools and college folks and things like that. This is one of those challenges that, if you can get into and get become a part of and get your organization a part of the National Cyber League, with the advent of things like esports and with us seeing more, more digital, sports competitions like esports or things like this coming into the limelight, it makes sense for us to have a national cyber challenge. You can kind of see from the graphics here, it's very gamified, right? It's very, very much geared towards trying to highlight, getting folks involved in terms of cybersecurity, making sure that they can create a community where cybersecurity is a passion, which if you've watched my streams before, it's a huge passion of mine, right? This one's focused to high school and college students, right? And so if you're a high school teacher and you're looking for, assistance with this, you can, reach out to these guys and start to put together some teams and whatnot to participate in the National Cyber League. Same with college students and whatnot. So this is a fantastic, well-worthy cause and gets you a lot of good experience while you're still in high school and college. And then kind of the other one that I would also recommend from a overall, just like a good mission perspective and a high level perspective is the US Cyber Challenge, right? And so this one is supported by DHS. Again, there's look at this from a career perspective too. By participating in, the US Cyber Challenge, if you have aspirations of going to be an offensive cyber, person for our government, or something else like that, then these are good kind of chops to have in terms of your resume, because these guys do participate, and they do kind of share their findings, and it gives you an opportunity to be exposed to the government and the DoD, and kind of gives you an opportunity to kind of pave that way in terms of working for our government, working on behalf of our government to do some of the things that they do on a regular basis. It's broken down into CyberQuest, where they've got challenging, where you can compete online with other folks, and then they've got entire summer camps where they've got workshops and things like that. And so, great breakdown between doing the quest and doing the camps, and kind of getting everybody involved in that. So I realized that was a pretty long segment. That was one of the bigger segments that we wanted to try to hit for today's stream. Hopefully, the folks who had requested that, hopefully you guys have gotten some good type of a feedback and information from that. Hopefully that was what you guys were looking for. When we talked about this yesterday. With that, we are going to take one of our very scheduled breaks, and we will be back at the top of the hour to cover an update to some cybersecurity news. And welcome back, everybody. Hopefully everybody had a good short break there. So I want to kind of take a step back, right? So we just got done with a huge segment on capture the flags. I realized that I went through that a little bit fast. Hopefully, everybody took away something from that. Remember, there's tons of resources out there for capture the flags, and they can be loads of fun, and I would definitely encourage everybody to participate in them. Remember that they're there to help educate you. They're help to really bring you along in your cybersecurity journey. And so I would definitely just make sure that you stay positive on a lot of those capture the flags. Make sure that you find ones that help help you improve your skills by challenging you in the right way. Don't get discouraged by them. I know it can get really, really easy to get discouraged by capture the flags, but really, you're just there to challenge yourself and to push yourself through and to learn things. And so, with that being said, want to kind of hit some of our cybersecurity news, that we've got here today. Realize that we did just stream yesterday, and so we did hit a lot of the topics yesterday during our stream. So. One of the things that we want to kind of follow on with today's stream was I had said yesterday that we may not get any new information coming out of the Twitter hack yesterday. And I was vastly wrong on that. We actually did see some releases come in today, specifically from the Twitter support page. And so if we hop on over to that, we can see that Twitter support did come out, and they did come up and say that they were made aware that 8 of the Twitter accounts that were involved, the attackers took additional step of downloading the account's information through your Twitter data tool, or reaching out directly to the account owner where we know this is true. So Twitter started to do this as well, right? This your Twitter data. I know Facebook is starting to do it, and some other companies are starting to do it as well, right? Where they give you the ability to download all of your data, and that way, you can see what they've kind of kept on you from a user privacy perspective. It appears that these guys who did ultimately have access to some of these accounts did actually use those accounts to download some data, which is kind of scary, right? Because this is what happens when you trust a tech company like Twitter, who has so much access to your private data. Now, whenever there is an attack like this, especially one where passwords are compromised, or where an adversary has access to your account, then yes, it does mean that you could be at risk of having your data downloaded by an adversary. There were some other things that this article kind of brought to light as well. One of the things that I think is interesting, right? This is, according to the report, right? They use Slack. I think this is a little bit clickbaity here, where they use Slack to breach Twitter. They didn't necessarily use Slack to breach Twitter. It wasn't a vulnerability in Slack or anything like that. It was more, we'll kind of get down here and show you some of the other updates to this. Some other statistics, and this is again, I applaud Twitter for the transparency on this, right? Because we get to see a little bit of behind the curtain on this, right? But they disclosed that there were 130 accounts in total that were compromised, and of those, 45 accounts, there was actually a password reset, log into the account, and send tweets. And so that kind of helps us see what you'll oftentimes hear me refer to whenever we talk about cyber attacks. You'll hear me refer to the plume, right? And so that's how big that we know the plume is that 130 accounts are compromised, and 45 of those 130, they did initiate a hard password reset, where they were then able to log into the account with the new password and send tweets. You can see that, while they affirmed that they weren't able to see passwords, right? That all the other things that you have stored in Twitter, like your name, your phone number, your email address, and things like that, all of that, the attackers did have access to. Whether the attackers made off with that data or not is that's one of those that we may or may not necessarily ever know until we see it for sale on the darknet or something like that. This is where they're, again, grateful for the transparency on Twitter, for some of the transparency they have here, right? Where they talk about manipulating a small number of employees to use their credentials to access Twitter's internal systems, including getting through our 2-factor protection. So you did hear me yesterday talk about multi-factor authentication. So during yesterday's stream, we did wonder whether Twitter did actually, in fact, have multi-factor authentication enabled on these guys' accounts. So it does appear that they did have multi-factor authentication. I would not read into this that the hackers breached multi-factor authentication. This could have, again, been one of those cases whereby they had access either through SIM swapping or some other type of social engineering exercise whereby they were able to get the second factor authentication code. But this does definitely confirm that some potential internal employees did have their access compromised that did allow the attackers to get in there. This is kind of where the Slack thing kind of comes into to play, is that apparently there was a Slack channel whereby Twitter employees were utilizing this Slack channel, and somehow they had been the attackers had been given access to this Slack channel to use this. And so this kind of comes together, right? We've got one part that we talked about yesterday, which was very much the access control piece of this and the multi-factor control piece of this. The other part of this, right, is if this is true, right, this is Twitter having a Slack channel and giving somebody access to a Slack channel. This gets into user rights management, identity management, and things like that. And where do you have these platforms such as Slack? And again, this isn't a knock on Slack at all. Slack is it's a fantastic business tool, but where do you have these types of Slack channels? And where do you have your employees giving access to Slack channels, or giving overly permissive access to these types of chat channels, whereby an attacker could gain access to other pieces of sensitive information that it may or may not necessarily need to have access to. And so when you're looking at all of the collaboration tools, especially in this COVID type of time period, make sure that you're evaluating those collaboration tools for the right level of access controls that are going around those collaboration tools to make sure that you've got those put in place appropriately. One of the other things that's not covered in this article, but what I did see on Twitter as I was researching this article as well, was one of the Bitcoin exchanges that were out there was able to stop several hundred thousands of those Bitcoin transactions before they actually made it to the attacker's Bitcoin address. So if you go back to yesterday's stream, or if you rewatch the VOD from yesterday's stream, right, we talked about what Bitcoin was and how to look at that Bitcoin address. During yesterday's stream, we talked about how we could look at that Bitcoin address and see that they clearly made away with $118,000 worth of Bitcoin as part of this heist. One of the things that I read today, and I'll try to find it and post it up on the comments when we post the VOD, later on, is that this exchange was actually able to prevent, once they were made aware that this hack was going on, several hundred thousands of additional coins from being transferred over to the hackers' wallets, which is I think one of the new things that we've seen is having the intervention, right, of one of those Bitcoin exchanges to kind of help prevent that. So this this kind of gives us an indicator that they could have made away with a lot more. All of this out of 130 accounts worth of access, and we still don't know even the full size of this balloon, because we don't know whose accounts those 8 accounts that they mentioned here. We don't know if there's anything significant in those 8 accounts by which they could have made away with. I think that they did mention somewhere in here that I think they mentioned somewhere in the article that they did validate that the 8 accounts that were taken, that were involved in this, that they did take data from, were not verified accounts. So none of the blue checkbox. So that means that there were some other accounts that were not verified accounts that they did go ahead and take data from for that one. So as promised, update on the Twitter hack. We'll continue to keep you updated as things unravel with Twitter. In my years of incident response, right, we see updates like this. It would not surprise me if this is kind of the downward trend of external information that we get out of Twitter. We maybe get something in a week or in a couple weeks as something comes out of this, but would definitely say that this is this is also Twitter to release this, and this is good information to have right here. So the next thing I want to talk about is patching, vulnerability management, and this issue of the F5 load balancers, right? And so a number of weeks ago, there was a CVE released. So again, CVE is common vulnerability exposure. It's a it's very common to see, right? It's this number that you see right here, right? That's what that is. As a matter of fact, U.S. Cyber Command. So I used to work for U.S. Cyber Command when I was in the Air Force. That's kind of the central command that governs all things cyber, offensive and defensive, for the United States military. They actually issued a tweet on the afternoon of July 3rd that recommended patching, despite the holiday weekend, despite the fact that it was 4th of July weekend, for F5s. Due to a proof of concept of of an exploit that could have been pretty detrimental for F5. So let's level set for a little bit for everybody, right? So an F5 is a lot of things. It can be a load balancer. So if you imagine that it sits out in front and there's like 50 websites that sit back here, right? This F5 sits in front of it and kind of acts as a middleman for all the websites that act back here to kind of proxy the traffic, kind of make sure that there's no exploits that are coming in, make sure that it splits the load out across all these web servers that are kind of going out back here. So it's a very key part in a lot of web infrastructure that's out there because it sits out in front and provides that type of administration for the servers that sit behind it. Lots of companies employ them. That's a really simplistic view of what an F5 does, but probably one of the best ways to talk about its relevancy inside of that architecture. So towards the end of June, F5 issued some urgent patches, towards the end of June, which isn't uncommon. We typically see, vendors make these types of urgent patches. And as a corporation, if you've ever been part of a corporate environment whereby, there is a patch management process. And actually, if you listen to the podcast that I did with Insecurity a couple of weeks ago, in terms of, we actually talked through the patching process. We actually talked about the F5 vulnerability. We talked about how hard it was to actually do that type of process. It's not uncommon to get these types of critical, alerts that come out from vendors, and most organizations kind of take them, put them into that process and churn through them and decide whether they're going to, execute on those patches or not. This one was no different. End of June, F5 released a urgent patch. It was rated, a CVSS score of 10, which is the highest they can go. We talked about that when we talked about SIGRED last week, right? And even as of that time of disclosure, right, there's a fantastic open source website that's out there called Shodan. If you're again, getting back to our open source intelligence folks, right? Shodan is one of the sources that we use for open source intelligence. It's a fantastic website to use if you're not familiar with Shodan. Definitely familiarize yourself with it. But at the time when they searched for F5s, or some type of F5 signature inside of Shodan, I don't even know if this is going to work. This may be a demo fail. But whenever they showed this, they would then get a set of results that showed how many systems were out there. But there was one report that showed that there were about 8,500 vulnerable F5 servers that were exposed to the internet when F5 released that patch at the end of June. What was unprecedented about this, what was definitely different and weird about this, right, is that we get a tweet from U.S. Cyber Command. That's not something that you typically see, U.S. Cyber Command doing, especially when it comes up and says, very explicitly, like, hey, you should absolutely unequivocally patch this vulnerability right now. I want to put that in perspective for everybody who's listening, right? You have the U.S. Cyber Command that sits and works in conjunction with the director of the National Security Agency, who is in charge of not only all defensive operations, but all offensive operations for the United States government, comes out and issues a tweet that says that you should patch something right now. for those who followed Snowden or were, regardless of whether you think he's a traitor or not is irrelevant in the conversation. But one of the things that came up during the Snowden conversation was, should intelligence agencies be more transparent about the vulnerabilities that they have or that they found or things like that? And everybody unequivocally says that the intelligence agencies should be giving us information on 0 days and things like that they find, or on imminent attacks that they find that are happening out there and they're in the wild. This is a case where U.S. Cyber Command issued a warning over Twitter about a vulnerability. That, my friends, is as close as you can ever ask to having the intelligence agencies tell you that either they have a 0-day for it, or that another state actor has a 0-day for it, or that there is another exploit out there in the wild that, if not currently being used, will shortly to be used to exploit multiple organizations that are out there. And so that was kind of a shot across the bow to log organizations that was like, oh my gosh, we should actually really take this one very, very seriously. And sure enough, a few days later, I think the U.S. Cyber Command tweet came out on the afternoon of July 3rd. By July 5th, so 2 days later, there were proof of concepts that were appearing, that were out there. And so as any type of exploit like this would have it, you have all sorts of folks who do tons of analysis. In this case, we talk about the company Bad Packets, and I've recently discovered Bad Packets. I wouldn't say that I've known them for a really long time, but I've actually been following their tweets for a while, and I'm actually very, very happy with a lot of the data that they're able to provide and the information they're able to provide out there. And so it's definitely a company that I've actually been pretty impressed with. And so you can see here that on July 5th, they talked about how their honeypots were detecting a ton of opportunistic mass scanning surrounding the F5 vulnerability, which is to be expected, right? They just released a proof of concept code. We would see, it would be expected to see all across the internet that as soon as that exploit code hits the wild, you see tons of scanning. As a matter of fact, working in security, when we look at vulnerabilities, that's almost one of the first things that we look for, right? Is there exploit code out there in the wild? Because if there's exploit code out there in the wild, you can almost guarantee that somebody's either scanning for it on the internet, or it's packaged in with some type of exploit kit, and being used to actively exploit things out there in the wild. And so good statistics here, right? You can see that they've they were able to find that some 3,000 unique hosts out there were vulnerable to it based on their data and based on what they're seeing. They've got it broken down by country, as well as an interactive map, organizations, things like that. So lots and lots of good data here. And so I don't bring this up because this was obviously the July 5th report, but as of today, they released an update, or the threat post released an update that indicated that even as of today, there are still thousands of machines that are vulnerable out there to this vulnerability as well. And so this brings us to the conversation, back around to the conversation of vulnerability management, patch management, and things like that, because more and more rapidly we find vulnerabilities like this that do pose critical risks to the infrastructure, and it takes an organization so long. So now in all reality, right, it's been 20 days since U.S. Cyber Command gave that initial warning. Most organizations can't patch vulnerabilities in 20 days. If we think about back to our example, right, where the F5 sits out here and acts as a mediator for all of the traffic that's coming into it from the organization, and you've got 50 servers back here. These 50 servers may host code for your e-commerce site. They may host your SAP instances. They may host any number of business critical applications or other web servers. And so, most organizations have a regulatory requirement that those systems have to be up and available for a certain number, a certain percentage of time or a certain availability. And so if they go down, then that's a reportable type of event. In certain countries and in certain regulations, when it comes to certain interpretations of GDPR, those types of downtimes or those types of DDoSes do actually equate to a GDPR type of incident. And so pushing a patch within 20 days to some of these technologies that exist out there is actually feasibly and technically just not possible for some of these big organizations, just given the complex infrastructure and environments that they have in place. And so it's not surprising to see an article like this, whereby this vulnerability still exists out there. So what's in it for me, right? With them, what do we do about this? It's super easy for us to just say, well, gosh, organizations, you have to patch. You have to remember that, if patching isn't possible, we have to look for compensating controls, and we have to look for other ways around that. It's about risk mitigation or risk acceptance. It can't always be about risk elimination. And so how do you look at your organization, and how do you evaluate not, having an unpatched F5 that has a 100% remote exploitable piece of exploit code that's out there that people are monitoring and seeing that there's active scanning going on across the internet? How do you contend with that? And then how do you make that that conversation with business leaders to say that, hey, this is a real problem for us, and we need to absolutely get in front of it? All right. I know that we could probably talk ad nauseum about patching. Patching is one of those things that it triggers a lot of folks in our industry and a lot of folks in our business, because there's a lot of passion and a lot of opinions that come from the conversation about patching. If anybody wants to come on stream and have a good, healthy debate on patching, I'd be more than open to that conversation. Okay. We are going to move into our final topic for the evening. I did this the other night, and it worked out really well for the folks on stream, and then subsequent kind of follow-ups with folks when I brought this up on Twitter and in Discord. So we're going to kind of go through this again, and good opportunity to kind of share some ideas and whatnot. So we're actually in our cybersecurity day. If you remember from yesterday, I was actually in our NetSec students. So today I'm in our cybersecurity. So I'm not just picking on just one subreddit. I'm kind of bouncing around all over the place. You can see here in this one. So this user talks about OJT experience, right? So I'm currently working in the Air Force in cybersecurity. So first and foremost, thank you very much for your service, and I appreciate the sacrifice you and your family make for us on a day-to-day basis. Working in a shop that doesn't work on computers and instead deals entirely with policy enforcement and regulations. I'm looking to get out of the Air Force and pursue a cyber career in the civilian world, but I need the OJT experience in order to get a job worthwhile, due to the fact that I'll be working for 4 years in a shop that will not get me the experience I need. Add a couple commas in there. Let's work on your grammar first. What are some things that I can do to get experience outside the shop that will provide me with solid education? There was a comment made down here, risk management framework, policy enforcement, they are in high demand. So I would agree with this. I would agree with this individual's comment, right? That risk management frameworks and policy enforcement stuff is indeed in high demand, and don't undervalue your experience. 100%. I will absolutely help you if you see this video, and I'll make sure that you see it, because I'll update Reddit so you've got it. But as you go to get out of the military, and I know that the transition office has they have resources to help you convert your experience inside the military into civilian experience. I don't want to discredit or disparage any of the great folks that they've got working in the transition office, but having transitioned out of the military myself, and in the mid 2010s, 2013, 2012, things like that, having helped other friends of mine work on their experience, their resumes as they transitioned out and whatnot, and then having been in the cyber world and hired several ex-military folks and worked with a lot of transitioning folks, I will absolutely help you work on your resume to make sure that experience is translated appropriately. This is absolutely the most helpful comment that I've seen out there, right? Is don't undervalue your experience. You have 4 years in the United States military. You have whether you have seen combat or not doesn't take away from the fact that you have absolutely, worked under pressure, worked in a challenging environment, worked inside and outside of your knowledge level. Depending on your experiences inside the military, there are things that you bring to the table. If you're 4 years in, you're probably an E4, potentially an E5. Those types of leadership things that you've done inside of the Air Force translate very, very, very well over to civilian level careers. If you've been in a shop that does policy enforcement and regulations, you absolutely have a transferable set of skills into most risk organizations or risk management organizations, and the ability to, translate, create for an organization the best way to set up a set of standards, to set up policies, and to enforce those policies inside that organization. Especially, it doesn't necessarily have to be directly cyber related, but you absolutely have the skills to do that job. And I would say that that's obviously the first, just kind of place that I would look for you to help transition you out is into a place to do that type of policy development and risk and governance inside of an organization. If you do have a desire to do technical type of work, you need to get this part out of your mind about needing OJT experience. There are lots of folks who do believe that is their key to success, is to get OJT experience. But I can definitively tell you that if you go back to my video a couple weeks ago where I talked about Neil's 4 ways to get into cybersecurity, if you were to do those 4 things to get into cybersecurity and you're able to, work on and be able to prove during an interview that you have the capabilities and the aptitude to be able to do that, you do not actually need any OJT experience, and you can absolutely get a job in some of the technical parts of cyber without any OJT experience. I will post this up on Reddit. But I will absolutely help you with this as you get closer to your out date for this. Just to kind of answer specifically, right? What are some things that I can do to get experience outside of the shop that will provide me with solid education? We obviously talked about, my video, my stream from a couple of weeks ago for the 4 things to get into cyber. Literally the section that I just covered at the beginning of this stream where we talked about CTFs and whatnot. I would definitely go back and rewatch that part of the stream or that part of the video when it goes up on YouTube, and I would start to participate in those CTFs if you have a desire to kind of pursue any of those technical type of endeavors. If it's non-technical, if you're looking for things in the policy and governance, or if you're looking for things in the risk management space, I would say I would actually go more towards some of the digital publications and the reports that are out there. I'll give you an example. I didn't talk about this one on stream, but I had it up, just to as I was reading through it and prepping and whatnot. But reports like this get issued on a pretty regular basis, right? So Verizon does their Verizon data breach report. This one I just got today from Rapid7, right, which is their national industry cloud exposure report. I'm not going to go through any of the stats because, like I said, I haven't even read this yet, but this literally just came out today. But these types of reports focus, very, very much on a data-backed analysis of a risk landscape. This is non-technical and provides you with a lot of information that helps you specifically work in policy enforcement and regulations in the cyberspace. And so I would go out there and I would look for those types of reports, and I would just start digesting those types of reports. And then when you go back to, Neil's 4 ways of getting into cybersecurity, that's the thread that I would use. Is I would look for those reports and I would pull on that thread. That's what I would be to, that's what I would use to try to start getting yourself into cybersecurity and doing that. So appreciate that question, and we'll make sure that you get a good answer to that. So again, we're still hanging out in our cybersecurity. I actually found a lot of really good questions from today in our cybersecurity that I wanted to answer. So the next one that came up is life as a cybersecurity professional. What is it like being a cybersecurity professional where you work? What tasks you do on a daily basis? What is your workflow like? I'm getting many different answers from reading online and would like to poll this community for some real feedback. Can cybersecurity be exciting? Is the job rewarding? Do you do penetration testing where you work, or is the job more geared towards writing policy or checking documentation? Any and all feedback is appreciated. Thanks in advance for sharing your expertise. So let's pick apart a couple of these questions and kind of go through there. When I answer these, right, I'll give you kind of my experience from what I do on a day-to-day basis, but I'll also kind of talk about, the teams that I lead and things like that. And, so you can kind of see what it's like across the broad scope of jobs that I've either worked myself or have had the privilege of managing fantastic people who have worked for me in those areas. So what is it like being a cybersecurity professional where you work? Where I work, it's very demanding. There's all the time there are too many things to do, not enough resources, not enough money, and you're always behind. It is the next closest thing to the most stressful working environment that I've ever had coming out of the military. And that's not meant to be there to scare you off, because, getting back down here, right, can cybersecurity be exciting? My job is exciting on a day-to-day basis. I tell people very much that I have not worked in cybersecurity, or I've not had a job in over 15 years, right? Because everything that I do is very exciting and every day is very exciting for me. And so with that being said, is that it may be one of the hardest jobs I've ever done in my entire life. But it is exciting for me on a day-to-day basis, and I very much love every day of it. You're constantly dealing with a tug and a pull as to how you deal with folks who don't believe in what it is that you do, don't believe in cyber, think that you're a hindrance. As a matter of fact, if you go back to the stream that I did last week, a very, very similar question was asked on the stream last week, and I don't mind answering it again at all. But you constantly are running into people that they don't want you to do what it is that you do. They think that cybersecurity is a nuisance. They think that it's overhead. They think that it costs money. They think that you're always in the way of getting things done faster, better, quicker. And so as a result of that, there's a constant amount of pressure that's put in front of you. When I was a pen tester, right, what it was like for me was just this rolling emotion of, trying to do a penetration test, gain access through any way possible, or that was allowed in scope. Find a way to, you're constantly, from a penetration testing perspective, looking for ways to demonstrate risk to your clients. And so you're constantly, it's not just always about going in, dropping, an exploit, getting domain admin, and then like throwing your hands up and being like, deuces, I'm out. I got everything I wanted to. You really are there trying to try to quantify risk and try to demonstrate risk for people who think their networks are the most secure thing in the world. And so it's a different level of stress that I have when I was a penetration tester, because your lens and the way that you're trying to approach it, is different for every organization and different for every environment. And so, lots of different ways in terms of what it's like for where I work with on a daily basis right now. What it's like being a cybersecurity professional, nobody knows what it is that you do. I'll give you a really, really good example. I was part of an organization, and you'll notice the Splunk banner behind my head here. I've been a Splunk customer for a number of years. I've got tons of friends inside of Splunk. I think Splunk is a fantastic technology. They do a lot of amazing things from what they're capable of doing perspective, right? It's not a security tool. They actually hate it when you call it a security tool. And so, one of the things that I've tried to do is inside of organizations, multiple organizations that I've been a part of where I've deployed Splunk, is I try very hard to bring the value of Splunk to IT teams or to SAP teams or to other teams like that. And the first question that comes out of their mouth is, right, like, wow, I thought Splunk was a security tool. That's a small example, but that's just an example of how there is a significant lack of understanding in this industry of what exactly it is that we do. Nobody really understands what it is that we do. And so, one of the reasons why I started the stream, right, was because I wanted to demystify what it was that we do inside of cyber. But, that lack of understanding of what it is that we do can be pretty frustrating sometimes. Penetration testers, just because we always simply talk about penetration testers, not every organization understands the value of bringing penetration testers into the organization. They think that, going out and buying an off-the-shelf penetration test is good enough inside their organization. And we could have an entire episode where we talk about, just the disastrous train wreck that some of these off-the-shelf penetration tests are. But it's because they don't understand, number one, what a penetration test is, and number two, the value that a penetration test brings. And that's fault on both sides. It's fault on organization side, and that's fault on, the side of companies that sell penetration tests, because I've seen, penetration tests or vulnerability scans being marketed as penetration tests, knowing very, very well that they're nothing more than a glorified vulnerability scan. And so there's just a lot of confusion about what cybersecurity means, and it varies from organization and from job to job. And that kind of goes, hand in hand with, like, what are your daily tasks on a daily basis? Where I'm at now, right? It's meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting, right? So I kind of have two jobs, right? So I work for a Fortune 100 company where I lead a global security operations function, and I run my own, consulting company on the side as well, where I provide, consulting type services, virtual CISO type services, and MDR for other companies that are out there as well. And so, the workflow, right, when I talk about leading a global security operations function, is I sit in a lot of meetings. I'm meeting with my peers across the different towers. I'm meeting with my peers in network. I'm meeting with my peers in hosting and data security. I'm meeting with vendors that support us, vendors that support networking. I'm doing a lot of puppet mastering across to try to make sure that the strategy that I've laid out is getting executed on a day-to-day basis. I'm constantly meeting with my team, my incident response team, and making sure that we're not only detecting and responding to incidents in a timely and accurate way, but we're also moving the needle from a maturity perspective and trying to push the envelope on doing more detection and whatnot. And so a lot of it is making sure that we move the needle. If we were to go back a few years, right, where I was a penetration tester, right, my day-to-day workload or my workflow was very much, wake up in the morning, review the penetration test that I was either currently on or was going to be coming up on in the near future. Do that planning, do that scoping, do whatever phase I was at in the penetration test, whether I was doing the recon phase, whether I was doing the network, penetration testing side, or I was on the web app side, whatever the case is, actually doing, either planning or doing that type of work before COVID happened, right? And we were doing a ton of on-site penetration testing. It was, going on site, interfacing with the client, conducting the penetration test on site, answering lots of questions because, you're trying to look like a professional, but you've got a laptop with a whole bunch of stickers on it. And you're obviously walking around with the, Wi-Fi kits and things like that, hacking into networks. And so obviously there's lots of people who are asking questions about things like that. So it definitely very much depends on the type of job that you're doing, but there's almost no shortage of things to do. If you've got something specific that you're interested in, I could probably tell you what most of those work days are like, because I've done probably most of those jobs. Can cybersecurity be exciting? I think I answered this before. I'll answer again. Absolutely, hands down, 100%. Cybersecurity can be exciting, frustrating, depressing, and make you angry all at the same time. It's probably the full gamut of emotions. It just depends on what's going on. I could mention for you, I've been part of massive cybersecurity incidents that have gotten board level visibility. And while it is incredibly stressful to, be that guy that's standing in front of the board or standing in front of the CEO or the CIO or anybody else, and talking to them about, their cyber incident, there's also a thrill because you're actively in the hunt. You're actively battling a cyber adversary. And so there's just no kind of substitute for that level of adrenaline that you're getting by being part of that and doing that. I think that kind of rolls right into right, is this job rewarding? Every job that I've had in cybersecurity, whether it was penetration testing, whether it was, leading incident response teams, whether it was leading security operations team, whether it was being a consultant for, for PricewaterhouseCoopers or myself, or even, working with the clients that I have now, being, a virtual CISO or doing managed detection response and things like that, the job is definitely rewarding. I mean, you are changing organizations on a day-to-day basis and protecting people, data, and computer systems. And so every day I'm excited to get up and go to work because of the difference that I'm making, everywhere that I go to. And so, short of, my time in the military and, working on national security objectives and things like that, this is the next most rewarding job I think I've ever had in my entire career. So I don't do penetration testing, at where I work right now. I have penetration testers who work for me, but my job is definitely not more geared towards writing policy or checking documentation. I think you kind of go to two different extremes here, where it's like you're either doing penetration testing or you're doing policy and documentation. Penetration testing, as I've said in previous streams in the past, right, is really only a small, tiny part of what it is that a security organization does on a day-to-day basis. So, there's penetration testing, there's incident response, there's threat hunting, threat intelligence, there's working on the actual security technologies, countermeasure deployment, things like that. And so there's lots of technical things that happen, between here and between here. There are definitely times where documentation has to be done, but documentation has to be done on the penetration testing side too. Penetration testers make their living not off of doing the penetration test, but off of doing the report. The report is what the client sees at the end of the day. And this is one of the problems that I have with our industry, is they think that the penetration testing is like, boom, domain admin, I'm good, I'm out, deuces, right? Fix your stuff. And that's definitely not what penetration testing is. The report that you produce, those words that you put on the paper, that is what the client, whether it's internal or external, that's the value that the client sees. And so, you will never be able to get away from the documentation piece of any job. If you're an incident responder, you're writing an incident response report. If you're a threat hunter, you're writing a threat hunter report. If you're threat intelligence, you're writing a threat intelligence report. If you're a penetration tester, you see the trend there. You will always have to do this documentation. You always have to do report writing. You're always going to have to do standard operating procedures, playbooks, whatever the case is. So, there's definitely more to every job than just penetration testing or checking documentation. But at the end of the day, this is the right question to be asking, and for me and for probably multiple other people, looks like you got quite a few comments on here already. It is absolutely one of the most rewarding careers I've ever had in my life. So hopefully that answers that one. We'll drop you a note, let you know that we answered your question on stream, and, look forward to your feedback there. Take a sip of water. I got told by my producer that I needed to drink more water on stream because I was having a little bit of a dry throat action going on here. So thank you for keeping me in check. All right, so the third one we have here, Panther Sleeps a day ago. Dear cybersecurity exec types, what is up with your industry? What is the pathway to these big money jobs? So there's a lot here. We'll try to hit the high spots, right? First, I get that the nature of the industry is to keep things under wrap, i.e. if all cybersecurity stuff is posted online, it would not be secure. Having said that, I see a huge discrepancy in career path advice. What I see on job boards, HR networks, are that thousands of tech jobs are needed in cybersec fields paying big money. What I read on Reddit on other job seeker sites is that the only way into the field, even with a BS in cybersec from uni, is to start at a help desk job and work our way up. And you're lucky to find those. Why is it that there's no clear level path when these jobs are so critical to national private industry security? College costs money. Many are willing to make the investment to serve a noble profession, but not if they don't have an on-ramp. So much simpler if it would be akin to, looks like a religious reference to getting from acolyte to pope, or select your own favorite armed service, stair-step path to leadership. Thanks. And all right, cool. So good question. let's break a couple of these down and see if I can't read in between the lines on a couple of these and answer them. Right? Is first of all, keep things under wrap. If all cybersec stuff is posted online, it would not be secure. Not exactly sure what you mean by that. We're definitely not trying to keep anything under wraps. As a matter of fact, there are really kind of two schools of mentality here, right? Is there's a transparency mentality, and then there's a legal mentality. That's really the only two lines that kind of exist there, right? Is most of us in the industry very, very much believe in transparency. We think cyber attacks, we need to know about organization cyber attacks. We need to know about, how they happen so that we can protect other companies and other industries. We need to know, what's happening out there in the industry from a threat intelligence perspective so that we can do better from a controls perspective. We need to understand how company X is doing things, because if we understood how company X is doing things, then maybe we can also protect ourselves as well. The problem comes in that, the lawyers and the bean counters have very much said things like, well, we can't tell people about our vulnerabilities, because if we tell people about our vulnerabilities, we're admitting that we know them. And if we admit that we know them and then they get used to hack us, then we're liable and we could be sued for it. And that's what happens when you create a culture whereby, everybody can sue everybody else for everything else. And so I wouldn't say that it's because it wouldn't be secure. It's more that you have bean counters and legal folks that step in and prevent you from writing about it for an article, or prevent you from representing an organization. So come to the stream, I'll demystify all those questions for you, because I very much, we can talk about that stuff here, and it can, we don't have to worry about any of those types of things going on here. Huge discrepancy in career path advice. What I see on the job boards, thousands of tech jobs are needed in cybersec fields, making big money. This is absolutely a true statement. I just did a board presentation a couple of weeks ago, whereby I put together some statistics on the amount of open cybersecurity recs. And in the US, there were 500,000 as of 2020 open unfilled cybersecurity recs, where there was literally no candidates in the candidate pool that could fill those recs, and they were estimating it was about 3.3 billion, or 3.3 million, not billion, 3.3 million globally worth of open cybersecurity recs. And so, yes, economics 101, that's definitely a supply and demand issue. There is more demand than there is supply, and so by that definition, there's definitely a lot of opportunity for big money out there. Caution you or anybody else that's reading some of these titles, right? And I'm sure you're familiar with clickbait, right? Some of these titles are very, very much clickbait title. They want you to open them up and read on them because they get paid per click on advertisers. Is there big money in cyber? Yes, there is. Is it hard to find big money in cyber? Yes, it is. Is it easy to figure out how to manipulate the system? Yes, it is. It takes you being in the system a little bit to figure out how it works. And a lot of what you're seeing here in this comment is some of the stuff that we're contending with on the job seeker side. And I'll give a shout out to a couple of folks who have come and asked me for advice, here recently. If anybody's looking for career coaching or things like that, please don't hesitate to reach out. I do a ton of career coaching for folks. But one of the things that I will tell you unequivocally, right, is that HR doesn't understand how cyber works. And so as a result, you'll oftentimes see HR jobs go up, for cybersec roles that don't necessarily match reality. Hey, we'd like an analyst. The analyst has to be fluent in EDR technologies such as Carbon Black, CrowdStrike, Sentinel-1, has to be completely fluent in Splunk with the Splunk Essentials and Certification, type of certifications. They've got to have 10 years of experience, and we're only going to pay them, $50,000 or $60,000 a year, right? I think your $12 an hour here one might be a little low. I'd be interested to see a job post that's looking for an entry level cybersecurity person, or even somebody like that starts at $12 an hour. But most entry level security jobs, you should be able to get in at $50,000 or $60,000 an hour. But the problem is that the recs that they write for you are insane, because they expect you to have skill sets of somebody who's been in the industry for 10 years, and that's just not realistic. And I think it's that disconnect that exists between HR folks and recruiters and things like that that causes a problem. As a matter of fact, here's what I'll do is I will have a recruiter on stream, and we will talk about cybersecurity roles and cybersecurity jobs and whatnot, and we'll see if we can't get them to help demystify some of those facts as well. But I think that's the big problem that we have here, is that HR is out of touch with what's required in our cybersecurity space. Furthermore, the only way in the field is not to start at help desk. Absolutely not. That is, I don't know who has told you that or where you have read that at, but that is absolutely not the only way into the field. I've done videos before on the 4 ways to get into cybersecurity. I can do some more talking about how to get into this field, but that is absolutely not the only way to get into this field. I'm curious as to how that came up in conversation and what transpired there for that to happen. Clear path for jobs so critical. So the reason that here's what I would tell you, that the reason that there is no clear path, we are still incredibly immature as an industry. We still struggle with trying to figure out what our image looks like inside the industry. Case in point, I've worked at organizations whereby they wanted to hire a pen tester, but their HR team was unable to create a job rec or a job title in that organization of penetration tester as a job title. The only thing that they had inside of their HR framework was security engineer, and that's actually taken from the old IT security engineers. It wasn't even directly related to a cybersecurity engineer. And the reason for that is because the organizations and the constructs that cyber is trying to fit into are still old, antiquated structures that don't make sense for the current way in which we as an organization are at from a maturity perspective versus the organizations that we're trying to fit into that have been around for hundreds of years. And so there is no way to say, well, you start out as a junior cybersecurity person and then you move up to a medium cybersecurity person, then a senior cybersecurity person, then a cybersecurity manager, then a cybersecurity senior manager, then a cybersecurity director, et cetera, on up the line. It just doesn't work like that, because you can also say that you're a junior cybersecurity person in risk and governance, right? Who then ends up going to be a junior cybersecurity person over in incident response, who then ends up going to be a manager in privacy, security privacy or something like that. So it's almost more of a mesh network in how our career works, instead of kind of the linear pipe that you put forth right here. Unless you go work for a consulting company like a Big Four, like a PwC or a Deloitte or an EY or somebody like that. They've got an okay from like a linear perspective from a growth model. But inside of most corporations and most organizations, this just doesn't exist, honestly. I know that that's not the best answer to the organization, and I'd be more than happy to go into this one. But there is no clear path, because we don't have one that exists inside of an organization, especially not a clear path like this. And I would more envision how our careers are set forth based on, a mesh network where everything is kind of intertwined together versus, a linear path or something like that. All right. So that's always fun. I'm always enjoy, going on to Reddit and answering a lot of those questions. As I mentioned, I'll make sure, folks who, we got those questions answered, make sure that you get those answers through this stream. Appreciate it. If anybody, as always, has got questions that they'd like for us to answer through any of our Q&As, we'd love to hear from you. Either drop us a comment on YouTube, drop us a note on Twitter, drop us a note on Twitch, or get in touch with us on Reddit. We'll be more than happy to answer your question on stream. with that, we have reached the end of our Monday stream. Appreciate everybody tuning in as always. Looking forward to chatting with you in a couple days, and keep it safe out there, and we'll be in touch.